And this one is a competitive game where players are trying to become the most dominant species. And this one is coming from the same publisher that created the games Oceans and Evolution, and this one does share a lot of similarities with those games, so if you are familiar with those, you will see those similarities here. I think this one will be my favorite of the three. I wasn't a huge fan of Oceans, and then Evolutions never really compelled me enough to want to buy it, but after looking into this one, it is one that I am considering. And I'll just go ahead and back that up by saying that this one is my own personal pick of the week. And the reason for that is because this game looks like it offers a lot of depth without a whole lot of complexity. It looks like it does a lot with very few components, and this is a game that offers a lot of variety when it comes to comboing and making you feel like you've made some very clever plays. And another cool aspect of this game is that it is also a modular game. The way that this works is that you'll be able to include any combination of the unique decks in your game in order to create a unique permutation of those decks. I really like this because not only does it offer a ton of variability from game to game, but since you're actually going to be swapping out completely different decks with different themes, each game is actually going to feel very different from each other depending on the decks that you choose. Each of the decks are going to be adding their own set of traits into the game that players are going to be using to evolve their species in various ways, but each of these decks could also introduce mechanisms either by modifying some of the core rules, adding on to those rules with some new ideas like different ways to gather food, or even introducing additional boards or components. But like I said, the goal of this game is to become the most dominant species, and the way that you do that is, of course, by being the player that ate the most at the end of the game. Players could eat vegetation, meat, or both depending on how they evolve their animals, and there will be a shared watering hole that's going to be populated with a certain amount of vegetation each round that players are going to be competing for. Players start the game with just a level 1 species of only one population. You're going to be tracking the level of your species with this token here. Then you're going to be tracking the amount of the population with these different population tokens to the right of it. The game plays over 4 rounds, and at the start of each round, all the players do get to draw 5 more cards into their hand, and you do get to draw those cards from any of the decks that you are including in that game. Players will then take turns playing as many of those cards from their hand as they want to or that they're able to, and there's a few different things that you can do with these cards. You can either play them into your species in order to add those particular abilities and stats and icons to that species, or you can discard cards to either raise the level of your species or increase the population of your species. Just keep in mind for each population token that you're adding, you're going to have to pay for that token with additional food at the end of the round, or else you will lose that population. Any cards that you don't play do carry forward into the following round, so if there is something that you think will be more useful to hang on to for a future turn, you can just choose not to play it and hang on to it for a later time. There's a ton of different trait cards that you'll be able to mix together in different ways as you build up your species, but just keep in mind that each of your species is only allowed to have 3 trait cards. These cards can have all sorts of different abilities that can trigger at different points in the game, but they can also have these different icons which might go hand in hand with those abilities, or they might be used to attack or defend from other animals. This is because you can turn any of your animals into a carnivore as a free action on your turn, and whenever you do that, they're going to be starting to eat meat. One of the ways to get meat in this game is to eat the population of the other animals out on the table, and you are also able to eat your own if no other players have animals that you're able to capture. But in order to determine which of the prey you're able to catch, you're going to be combining your level with each of your predator stats, adding them up to your total strength, and then you'll compare that to each of the other animals' level added with each shell icon that they have within their species display. Any of the species' defense that totals less than your strength is going to be suitable prey for your animal. But players only feed their animals after all the players have played any cards that they want, and then when they do feed their animals, they're going to be going in turn order. As I said, any of the predator species are going to be eating any of the other animals at the table that are weaker than them, and you're going to be doing this for each population token that you have, assuming that there are enough animals there to eat. For the animals that eat plants, your primary source of food is going to be coming from the watering hole, but you're only allowed to take as many as your species level, plus any of the vegetation icons on your cards. But of course, you can only take food up to the amount of populations that you have to feed, and for each one that you are able to feed, you're going to be putting that food token on top of it. Any populations that go unfed will die and will be removed for the following round. And if a population ever gets to 0, either from not being fed or by other animals eating it, then that species will go extinct. Luckily, you do get a new species token each round to start a new species, and there are different actions that allow you to gain these as well, which means that you can have multiple species on the go. I should also mention that at the end of each round, you're going to be taking all the food tokens off of any of the populations that you're able to feed, and then you're just going to be hanging onto those as victory points at the end of the game, and the player who has the most after the 4 rounds is going to be the winner of the game. And if you do want to check this one out, you can find a link to it in the description down below, and of course, click to get notified.